Every single day, in tens of millions of homes across the United States, cat owners do something they believe is a pure act of love. They walk over to their cat, scoop them up, hold them close, and press their face into that soft fur. They pet them without asking. They pick them up mid nap. They follow them across the room for a cuddle they decided the cat needs right now. And they do all of this thinking, at the deepest level, that closeness equals love, that more touch equals more bond, that a cat held is a cat that feels cared for. Here is what almost nobody in the pet world is telling you. That instinct you are following, that pull toward your cat, that desire to hold them and initiate contact on your terms, is silently teaching your cat that your presence means loss of control. Not warmth, not safety, loss of control. And the cat whose autonomic nervous system has learned to associate your approach with the removal of their agency is not building a deeper bond with you. They are quietly building a stress response around you instead. This is not about how much you love your cat. The love is obvious. This is about a specific biological mechanism in the feline nervous system called autonomic threat activation, and it fires in 300 milliseconds. That is faster than your cat can consciously process what is happening to them. 300 milliseconds? Before they even register, it is you reaching for them. Their body has already begun flooding with cortisol, tensing every muscle in their frame, and preparing for an escape that may never come. Research from the University of Lincoln's Animal Behavior and Welfare Research Group found that cats who experience repeated forced handling show cortisol levels up to 2.4 times higher than baseline during interactions with their primary caregivers. 2.4 times. With the person they share a home with every single day. And here is the part that makes this so damaging to the bond you are trying to build. Cats do not reset cortisol the way humans do. A single forced interaction in the morning can keep stress hormones elevated for up to 4 hours. Which means if you pick up your cat at 7 in the morning before you leave for work, your cat's nervous system is still carrying the chemical residue of that stress response at 11. By the time you get home in the evening and sit down on the couch hoping they will come curl up next to you, their body has been running a low-grade alarm for most of the day, and they have absolutely no way to tell you why. This is the invisible damage that never shows up at the vet. No blood panel catches it, no physical exam reveals it. But the effects accumulate with every day of forced contact, and they show up in ways most owners misread entirely. The cat who used to sleep at the foot of the bed but now prefers the closet floor. The cat who flinches slightly when you reach for them, even though you have never once hurt them. The cat who is right there in the same room with you all evening, but always just one step out of reach. That is not personality. That is a nervous system that learned, one well-intentioned forced cuddle at a time, that proximity to you comes with a cost. To understand exactly what is happening inside your cat's body when you approach them without invitation, you have to understand how the feline nervous system processes social interaction at a biological level. And it is nothing like the way yours works. Your nervous system evolved inside a social species. Humans are wired for group living. Touch is calming to you because thousands of generations of evolution taught your brain that contact with others means safety, alliance, and belonging. When someone you love hugs you, your oxytocin rises, your cortisol drops. The equation is straightforward. Your cat's nervous system evolved on an entirely different blueprint. Cats are what behavioral ecologists call semi-solitary obligate predators. That phrase carries a very specific meaning. In the wild, the cat that survived was the cat that maintained complete situational control at all times, control of their movement, control of their territory, control of when and how they allowed physical proximity with another animal. Losing that control even briefly, even with a known individual, registers in the feline autonomic nervous system as a potential threat situation. Not a certainty, a possibility that the brain must evaluate immediately and at full alert. Dr. Sarah Ellis, a researcher at International Cat Care and co-author of The Trainable Cat, documented this mechanism across extensive behavioral studies. Her findings confirmed that the large majority of domestic cats, regardless of how well socialized they are, show measurable physiological stress indicators when handling is initiated by the human rather than invited by the cat itself. The direction of initiation is everything. The same physical contact that feels like a warm embrace to you is processed by your cat's nervous system as an unpredictable event that requires an immediate threat assessment. Now place this biological reality inside the life of a modern apartment cat. No territory to patrol, no prey to hunt, no environmental complexity to navigate. The apartment cat is already living with a chronically understimulated threat detection system that has nothing meaningful to focus on except the patterns of the household around it. That system is scanning constantly for information about what is predictable and what is not. And if the pattern it has learned is that you approach without warning, initiate contact without asking, and hold on even when the cat tries to pull away, then your presence in the room becomes a source of unpredictability. Unpredictability is exactly what the feline nervous system was built to find threatening. Here is what this looks like across a single day inside your cat's experience. You wake up and immediately reach for them at the foot of the bed. Autonomic threat activation fires instantly. Cortisol rises. They tolerate it because flight does not seem necessary in that moment. But the alarm is running. You leave the house. The cortisol begins to clear. Slowly, over roughly 90 minutes, their nervous system returns towards something approaching baseline. By mid-morning, they are calm. They find a patch of sunlight. They groom. Their body is resetting. You come home at 6 in the evening. You see them on the couch and your face immediately lights up. You call their name, you walk directly toward them with your arm already extended, and in 300 milliseconds, their entire autonomic nervous system reads those 3 incoming signals. Direct gaze, forward movement, approaching limb as a predator approach pattern. Because in the evolutionary context that built the feline brain over millions of years, that precise combination of visual inputs was what a real threat looked like. Your cat knows it is you, but the nervous system does not wait for that conscious recognition before it responds. The alarm fires first, every time. This is not a flaw in your cat. This is millions of years of survival engineering working exactly as it was designed. The problem is that nobody told you this was happening. The pet industry, the commercial cat food brands, the mainstream pet care channels, and even the majority of general practice veterinarians were all trained in an era when cats were considered low-maintenance companion animals, when the science of feline stress physiology was barely being formally studied, when the idea that a cat might need anything more sophisticated from its owner than food, water, and occasional attention was treated as unnecessary complexity that most pet owners did not need to think about. The result is an entire generation of cat owners who love their animals deeply and are expressing that love in a language their cats genuinely cannot receive. Not because they are bad owners, because no one handed them the real translation guide. A researcher named Kristin Vitale at Oregon State University studied attachment patterns between cats and their owners for years, publishing findings in the journal Current Biology that shocked even behavioral scientists. She found that 65% of cats show secure attachment to their human caregiver, meaning they use the owner as a safe base and return to them after exploring. The same percentage seen in human infant attachment studies. 65%. That means your cat is not indifferent to you. The biology of attachment is already there, already built in. The only question is whether the daily interactions you are having are feeding that attachment or slowly eroding it. There is one more detail about the modern domestic cat situation that almost no pet channel ever addresses, and it is critical for understanding why the approach you are about to learn works as fast as it does. Modern apartment cats are running a threat detection system that evolved for an environment of genuine complexity, movement, territory, and intermittent social encounters. When that system has nothing real to process, it does not go quiet. It becomes hypersensitive. It begins to overread normal stimuli. The footstep coming across the room, the hand moving toward their head, the reach from above. All of these register with far greater intensity in an understimulated nervous system than they would in a cat living in a complex, enriched environment. What that means practically is that the apartment cat who flinches at your approach is not more fearful by nature than a barn cat. They are more reactive because their threat detection system has been running at high idle with nothing appropriate to focus on. And every forced interaction you add to their day amplifies that reactivity rather than smoothing it. This is why what comes next matters so much. What you are about to learn in the chapters ahead is not a collection of soft tips about being gentler with your cat. It is the exact biological mechanism behind what actually builds attachment in the feline nervous system, and a precise daily protocol grounded in that mechanism. A protocol that does not require more time with your cat. In some ways, it requires less, but it requires a completely different quality of presence. And once you understand the science behind why it works, You will see immediately why everything else you were doing was working against you. Your cat is not distant, they are not aloof, they are not the wrong cat for you. They are a perfectly functioning feline nervous system waiting for the specific signals that its biology was built to respond to. The cat who is going to choose to sit next to you, press against your leg, follow you from room to room without being called, and look at you the way you have always wanted to be looked at by your cat. That cat already exists. They are in your home right now. And what changes everything for them starts with understanding one thing the mainstream pet world has never clearly explained about the direction that affection is supposed to travel. There is a specific moment that veterinary behaviorists have documented hundreds of times in clinical observation. A cat owner sits down for a consultation and describes the same problem using almost identical words. My cat used to be so affectionate. They used to follow me around, sleep on me, sit in my lap. And now I barely see them. I do not know what I did wrong. I love them the same as always. The cat has not changed. The owner has not changed. But somewhere in the daily rhythm of the household, a pattern accumulated that the cat's nervous system could no longer absorb without pulling away. What that owner almost never learns from a single vet visit is the precise mechanism behind what happened, because understanding the mechanism requires going much deeper into feline social biology than most general practice veterinarians are trained to go. And it requires admitting something the mainstream pet world has never been comfortable admitting out loud. Most of what we collectively teach cat owners about expressing affection is built on the assumption that cats process love the way dogs do. And that assumption is wrong at the biological level. Dr. John Bradshaw, an anthrozoologist at the University of Bristol and author of Cat Sense, spent years studying the social lives of domestic cats. His research produced one of the most important and least discussed findings in the entire field of feline behavior. Unlike dogs, who were selectively bred over thousands of years to read and respond to human social signals, cats domesticated themselves on their own timeline. They were not bred for compliance. They were not bred for tolerance of forced physical contact. They selected themselves into human environments because the association was mutually beneficial, and they retained complete control over the terms of that association. Every social behavior your cat shows you today, every head rub, every slow blink, every decision to sit within arm's reach, is a voluntary offer. It is never a default state. It is a choice made fresh in real time based on what the environment is telling their nervous system about whether it is safe to be that close right now. That word, voluntary, is the entire key. The feline attachment system is built around the concept of chosen proximity. A cat who approaches you is a cat who has just run a full internal assessment of the situation and decided that moving toward you is worth the vulnerability it requires. A cat who is carried to you has had that assessment bypassed entirely. And the critical thing the pet industry never explains is that bypassed assessments do not produce bonding. They produce tolerance at best and avoidance conditioning at worst. Here is how this plays out at the neurochemical level. When your cat chooses to approach you, sit near you, initiate contact on their terms, their brain releases oxytocin, the same bonding hormone that is released in human social connection. That oxytocin reinforces the behavior at a deep neurological level. It tags you, specifically you, as a source of reward, comfort, and safety. Over time, this builds what researchers call a secure attachment, a stable internal working model of you as a safe and trustworthy presence. When your cat is forced into contact they did not initiate, there is no oxytocin release. Instead, the stress axis activates, cortisol rises, and the nervous system tags that experience as something to manage, not something to seek. The behavioral consequence, the pulling away, the choosing to stay just out of reach, the gradually increasing distance over weeks and months, is the cat's nervous system doing exactly what it is designed to do, moving away from repeated sources of uncontrolled stress. This is not rejection. This is biology. And quoting the wrong lesson from it is exactly how the cycle of forced affection perpetuates itself. The owner feels the cat pulling away, wants to restore closeness, reaches for them more, and the distance grows. There is a cat named Miso whose story gets described often in feline behavior consultations. Miso was a 6-year-old domestic short hair, apartment cat in Chicago described by his owner as having gone completely cold over about 18 months. He had been affectionate as a younger cat, would sleep on the bed regularly, would initiate contact. Over time, he began spending most of his day in a single closet. His owner, a thoughtful and genuinely devoted person, had been responding to each withdrawal by trying harder. More pets when he did appear, more attempts to hold him, more calling his name across the apartment to draw him out. The well-intentioned escalation had accelerated the exact pattern it was trying to reverse. When the behavioral consultant introduced a completely different approach, one grounded in the feline voluntary proximity model, the change in Miso began within 11 days. Not because of a new supplement, not because of medication, because the environment around him shifted from unpredictable forced contact to consistent, readable, low-demand presence. Within 3 weeks, he was sleeping at the foot of the bed again. His owner had not added a single thing to their schedule. They had simply stopped doing the thing that was running Miso's cortisol response every single day. Now let us talk about what the mainstream pet world got wrong and how that happened, because understanding this part is what separates an owner who makes accidental progress from an owner who understands deeply enough to never slip back into the old pattern. For most of the 20th century, cats were studied primarily as subjects in laboratory research, not as companion animals with complex social lives worth understanding on their own terms. The behavioral science that existed was largely extrapolated from dog behavior research, which itself was heavily influenced by dominance theory, a framework that has since been substantially revised even within canine science. The concept of an animal having a genuine biologically grounded need for autonomy over social interaction was considered anthropomorphic. It was not taken seriously in mainstream veterinary training. The result is a massive gap between what feline behavioral science has established over the last 3 decades and what actually reaches the average cat owner. Most cat care books written before 2010, most general-purpose pet care websites, most advice passed from owner to owner across social media is still operating from a model of feline affection that was outdated before most current cat owners got their first cat. The model that says cats are aloof but can be warmed up with enough persistent effort. The model that treats a cat sitting in the same room as a failure to fully bond, when in reality a cat sitting calmly in the same room as you without leaving is already delivering one of the clearest signals of trust in the feline behavioral vocabulary: shared space. That is what the science shows actually builds the bond. Not physical contact, not holding, not sitting close. The willingness of the cat to occupy the same space as you without activating a flight response is the foundation on which everything else is built. Contact comes later. It comes as a natural extension of accumulated shared space that has never been violated, and it comes on the cat's timeline, which, once you stop working against it, is often much shorter than owners expect. A study published in Behavioral Processes by Claudia Edwards and colleagues at the University of Vienna found that cats in households where owners consistently allowed the cat to initiate and terminate interactions showed significantly higher rates of proximity-seeking behavior over time than cats in households where owners frequently initiated contact themselves. The cats whose autonomy was respected did not become more distant, they became more present. They sought out the owner more often, stayed closer for longer, and displayed more affiliative behaviors like head rubbing and allo-grooming attempts than the cats whose space was regularly entered without invitation. The conclusion is counterintuitive enough that most people resist it the first time they hear it. Doing less produces more. Giving your cat the unambiguous experience that your presence in the room never automatically means something will be imposed on them is the single most powerful thing you can do to pull them toward you, because the feline nervous system is always running the same core question in the background. If I move toward this person, will I retain control of what happens next? The moment the consistent answer to that question becomes yes, the approach behavior begins, and it builds on itself the way all reinforced behaviors do, faster and more completely than most owners believe is possible after months or years of distance. This is also why the mainstream advice about using treats to draw a reluctant cat out of hiding is so incomplete. Treats can work as an initial bridge. They give the cat a concrete reason to approach, but if the approach is immediately followed by the owner reaching out to pet the cat before the cat has signaled readiness, the treat becomes associated with the thing the cat was trying to avoid. Many owners have accidentally trained their cats to take a treat and immediately retreat because every treat delivery came with uninvited contact attached to it. The modern apartment cat is navigating this dynamic in an environment that offers them almost no other way to regulate their stress, no territory to expand into, no real hunting sequence to complete, no complex social choices beyond staying in the room or leaving it. What happens in the dynamic between them and their owner is not one part of their social life. For a cat living in a one-bedroom apartment in an American city, it is essentially the whole of it. The stakes of that dynamic are therefore far higher than most owners realize. Getting it wrong does not just mean occasional tension. It means chronic low-grade stress that compounds over years and expresses itself in immune function, in behavioral change, in the kind of quiet withdrawal that owners eventually describe as their cat just not being affectionate anymore. What changes this is not effort, it is understanding. And now that you have the mechanism clearly, the protocol in the next chapter is going to make immediate sense, not as a collection of random tips, but as a direct application of exactly what you now know about how the feline attachment system actually works. 3 specific daily practices, each taking less than 8 minutes, each targeting a distinct layer of the feline trust building sequence. And the reason almost no one delivers this the way it needs to be delivered is that they skip the biology first. They go straight to the what without ever explaining the why, which means owners follow the steps for a few days, see partial results, and abandon them before the full neurochemical shift has had time to take hold. You're not going to make that mistake because you now understand exactly what you are building and why every piece of it matters. Everything you read in the previous 2 chapters exists for one reason, so that what comes next is not a list of tricks you follow blindly and abandon when results feel slow. It is a direct application of the biology you now understand. The feline nervous system responds to patterns, not to single events. Every consistent signal you send across multiple days builds a cumulative neurochemical picture of you in your cat's brain. The protocol below is designed to build exactly one picture: that you are the safest, most readable, most controllable presence in their environment. Once that picture is stable, the behavior every cat owner wants, a cat who seeks them out freely and asks for closeness on their own, follows as a biological inevitability. The protocol is called SIT, 3 letters, 3 components, each one targeting a distinct layer of the feline trust-building sequence, and each one with a specific daily number that is not arbitrary. The numbers come from the behavioral research and changing them. Doing more when you feel impatient or less when you get busy is the single most common way owners get partial results and conclude the approach does not work. The S in SIT stands for shared silence. This is the foundation of the entire protocol, and it is the component that surprises owners the most because it asks you to do something that feels passive. Every single day, twice daily, you are going to spend 7 minutes in the same room as your cat doing nothing directed at them, not calling their name, not looking at them steadily, not reaching toward them. Just existing in shared space with a book, your phone, a cup of coffee, anything that gives your eyes somewhere natural to rest that is not your cat. 7 minutes, twice a day, that is all. The mechanism behind this is what researchers at the University of Veterinary Medicine Vienna described in a study on feline social referencing published in the journal Animal Cognition. Cats use a process called environmental baseline scanning to determine which elements of their territory are stable and which require active threat assessment. When you enter a room and immediately initiate interaction, you are an active variable. Your cat's nervous system cannot mark you as part of the stable background because your behavior is unpredictable in that moment. But when you enter consistently, sit consistently, and do not initiate consistently, you begin to map as a stable environmental feature. And stable environmental features do not trigger threat assessment. They trigger something entirely different: curiosity. This is the exact moment owners who try this protocol describe with almost identical language. Around day 4 to day 7, they stop noticing the cat watching from across the room and start noticing the cat has moved closer without being called. Not dramatically, a foot closer, then 2 feet, then they are on the same piece of furniture. The distance collapses not because you pulled them in, but because you stopped being a variable their nervous system needed to track defensively. You became predictable. And in the feline brain, predictable and safe are almost the same word. The I in SIT stands for invitation check. This is the 2-second step that completely transforms every single physical interaction you have with your cat for the rest of their life. Before every touch, every time, no exceptions. You extend one finger at roughly nose height and let your cat close the distance. Not your whole hand, one finger, held still a few inches from their face, waiting. This single gesture does something neuroscientifically significant. It transfers the initiation of contact to the cat. Their brain registers the approach to your hand as a chosen behavior. The touch that follows is therefore tagged by the nervous system as self-initiated, which routes the experience through the reward pathway rather than the threat axis. Oxytocin instead of cortisol. The touch is literally the same physical event. The neurochemical outcome is the opposite. Cats who are greeted this way every time, without exception, begin to change their behavior around the greeting itself within 10 to 14 days. They start moving toward the extended finger rather than waiting for it to come to them. They begin arriving at the greeting point with a raised tail, which in feline body language is the clearest possible signal of social confidence and positive anticipation. That tail in the air means their nervous system is predicting a good outcome. You build that prediction through repetition, through asking every single time before you touch them. One clarification that matters. The invitation check does not mean your cat will always engage. Some days they will sniff the finger and walk away. That is not rejection. That is the protocol working exactly as designed. A cat who is free to say no without consequence is a cat who trusts that yes is also genuinely their choice. The ability to decline is what makes the accept meaningful. On the days they push their cheek into your hand and stay, the neurochemical reward is far deeper than anything built through touch that was never offered as a choice. The T in SIT stands for termination rights. This is the component that is hardest for owners to maintain when things are going well, which is exactly why it is the most commonly skipped and the most important to protect. The rule is this: your cat ends every physical interaction, not you. For a minimum of 3 consecutive sessions every day, you allow whatever contact your cat initiates to conclude on their timeline. When they pull back, when they shift away, when they stand up and stretch and begin to walk off, your hands stop. No reaching to bring them back. No one more pet. Full stop. The mechanism here involves what behavioral neuroscientists call appetitive consummatory sequencing. When a cat freely initiates contact, pursues it to its natural conclusion, and terminates it on their own, the brain files it as a completed positive experience. Clean resolution. The next time a similar opportunity arises, the brain references that clean resolution and generates anticipation. This is the neurological basis of wanting to come back. When an owner extends contact past the point where the cat was ready to stop, the clean resolution never occurs. The brain files the experience as incomplete rather than satisfying. Over dozens of these interrupted interactions, positive anticipation stops forming before them. The cat stops seeking them out, and the owner watches the distance grow without understanding why. Termination rights reverses this. 3 sessions per day, cat terminates every time. Within 2 to 3 weeks of consistent practice, most owners report the same change. Their cat is initiating more contact and staying longer during each session. Not because the owner extended the time, because the cat's brain is now predicting clean, satisfying interactions and actively seeking more of them. The full SIT protocol in daily practice looks like this. Morning, 7 minutes of shared silence with your cat somewhere in the room. You do not look for them or call them, you sit and let them orient. Evening, another 7 minutes of shared silence. Anytime you are about to touch your cat, the invitation check, 1 finger, 2 seconds. Let them close the gap. Every physical interaction that day, minimum 3, ends when they decide. Total daily time investment, 14 minutes of intentional stillness and the 2-second habit before every touch. What it generates across 10 to 21 days of unbroken consistency is a nervous system retraining at the level of your cat's threat assessment and reward circuitry. The behavioral result is a cat who appears to anyone watching to have had a personality transplant. They are the same animal, the same biology, the same capacity for attachment that was always there. The only thing that changed is the quality of the signal you're sending. Now, the most common mistake that invalidates the entire SIT protocol, and it happens to almost everyone who tries this, is what behavioral researchers call intermittent override. This is when an owner follows the protocol faithfully for several days, sees the cat beginning to close the distance, feels the warmth of that progress, and in a moment of excitement or affection, reaches out without the invitation check or extends a session past the point of the cat's clear signal to stop. Just once. Just this time because they are so close and it feels so right. One override does not permanently set back the progress, but it does something specific to the pattern the cat's nervous system has been building. It reintroduces the cat's original core uncertainty. Will this stay predictable or will it not? A nervous system that was beginning to categorize you as a stable, readable feature of the environment has to reopen that question. And reopening it adds measurable days to the timeline before the cat's approach. Behavior consolidates into a consistent habit. The owners who see the fastest results are not the most enthusiastic, they are the most consistent. Enthusiasm is a variable, consistency is the signal. Your cat's nervous system cannot tell the difference between love and a protocol. It can only read what your behavior does to their sense of control. Every day you deliver the full SIT sequence, you are building the bond that was always possible. Drop the word CT in the comments right now if you are going to start this today, not tomorrow. Today, because your cat is in that room with you right now, running the same background assessment they have been running for months, waiting for the signal to shift. And every hour that passes before you sit quietly and give them the first 7 minutes of shared silence is an hour their nervous system spends in the same default pattern. If this changed the way you understand your cat, share it with one other cat owner in your life. The gap between what feline behavioral science knows and what the average owner has been told is enormous. And the cats living in that gap are the ones quietly withdrawing in closets and on closet shelves, while their owners wonder what they did wrong. They did not do anything wrong, they just needed the real translation. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep getting that translation, because the next video goes even deeper into something that affects every single cat living in an American apartment, a mechanism that runs quietly in the background of your cat's neurology every single night, and that almost no mainstream pet channel has ever explained with the precision it deserves. It involves what happens to the feline brain during the darkest hours of the night and why your cat's behavior in the morning is a direct readout of something you either gave them or did not give them the night before. That video will change how you think about your cat's entire daily experience. Do not miss it.